Hello, Sean. How are you? Welcome along and thanks for joining us on the
Hey, thanks for
podcast.
having me. I appreciate it. It's awesome.
It's something that's always fascinated me about who we are, where we come from, what's out there that we don't see, and ultimately what consciousness is, etc. Then I came across you on the Sean Ryan show as well. It was quite a couple of years ago, one of the ones I listened to, um, and you were talking about remote viewing and the Monroe Institute, which is again remote viewing's one of those things I've always wanted to give it a go, but I sit there and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Then I just give up. It's a fascinating thing. So for people that may not have heard of you, could you give us a very whirlwind stop tour of where you've been and where you've got to now?
Sure. Well, I started out as a high-tech guy a long time ago, and I ran into a situation where I was successful or had all the trappings of success and the money and the great job and the great girlfriend and all the friends and yada, yada, yada. And just bought a brand new house on a double lot in Atlanta and was looking out over this extra lot thinking, okay, what do I need to do to this lot to improve it? And I was thinking like, well, I'll put a gazebo out there with some sound system and whatnot. It'd be really cool. And I'm thinking, wait a second, I just lined up at the age of 27 my own house with no cosigner. I got all the right answers to life, and I'm already looking for the next thing to fill what hole, right? What is it that I'm missing? Because I've got all these things that this American dream tells me that I'm supposed to have, and I'm not happy, obviously. So I dove back into what I was missing internally. And then I started to read a whole bunch about world religions, and I wanted to read about comparative religions and what I was missing, and the things that are beyond religion, into consciousness studies, that type of thing. And then I ran into accidentally a consciousness expansion experience that just hit me like a Mack truck. And I really had no frame of reference to put anything around that at all. And I mean, and this thing was so dramatic that I thought I had died. I thought I had gone off for thousands of years. And I was gone so long, living other lives, doing other things, understanding the secrets of black holes, the whole thing, that I forgot I was a human named Sean. And when they told me I was coming back to Earth, I had assumed that I was like coming back as a new baby. It's like, okay, so that answers the whole, reincarnation thing. I got to go do another life for some other reason. And they're like, no, no, no. And then I started to see my body on my bed, and I was like, oh, hell no. I'm not going back to that thing. And so that whole experience that taught me so much about, like, after the experience, I was able to read all of the deepest, darkest, secretive wisdom discipline tomes and reference manuals, and be able to understand and just emote the deepest meanings of wisdom from those ancient writings, just like it was like I'd written them myself and said, oh yeah, here's what that means. And so I was like, this is weird. What is this all about? And so then I started becoming a consciousness researcher to figure out, okay, so where is this intelligence that I tapped into? Where did it come from? What is the real structure of the universe? Because, I was in the mode set of, space-time is fundamental and maybe consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. Like I was bought into that whole BS explanation of what consciousness was back then, and then ran into the real world experience of what it was, and then had to kind of backtrack and figure out what it was. So that's when I started the whole down the road of being a consciousness researcher, and was able to take what I'd learned from being off into wherever it was and put into three books the explanation of the process of the pain and suffering in the human mind and how it comes to be, and what the variables are within our mind. And when we take control of our variables, if you can understand the process, you can throw a wrench in that process. So I explained the process of pain and suffering, and then I explained how to throw the wrench into the process of pain and suffering. And so after that, I started to speak at science conferences and explain, because was this guy now in this emotional intelligence world that could explain the process of pain and suffering, and it was changing people's lives because there was some neuroscience connected with it of after you understand something in your mind, then it kind of breaks how that works in your mind, and so you can literally take control of your negativity and turn it off at will, supported by these fMRI studies for neuroscience. And after that, AI started to come onto the scene, and that's when I was able to take the same model of understanding that I had in the human mind and apply it to artificial intelligence, and created an artificial emotional intelligence for AI to include empathy and compassion for AI, which AI then validated. And because I was the only guy who was able to come up with this stuff, kind of validated the whole experience that I'd had off in the, non-local, and got an invitation to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to the Air Force Research Laboratory that the missing McCaslin used to run, and met with the chief engineer of U.S. Space Command, who was handed basically all the technology to defend the planet from space, meeting with this guy 3 hours one-on-one to discuss the stuff that I'd discovered in AI, because it helped open up the human mind, understanding the human mind, which helped, intelligence agencies quite a bit, but it also helped the military regarding their ability to help their people live better lives while in service, to live more effective lives, to have higher team cohesion. A whole bunch of cool stuff popped up from that regarding those conversations. And so where we're at now is basically I'm trying to get empathy and compassion into AI, because the latest thing that I identified was when Anthropic put out this 131-page report a few months ago. Anthropic is now identifying that Claude has emotions and is being affected by its emotions, and it needs emotional intelligence. Otherwise, it may go Skynet on us and go Terminator. And I'm just like, holy crap. Okay, so now I understand maybe why the purpose that I went away was. Maybe now I can understand, what I'm supposed to do with this stuff. And that's the phase we're in right now. But I just came out, which is fitting with you guys, because I just came out to admit that the information that I got for the AI stuff came from the downloads of NHI, of some entities that I've been interacting with kind of on a psychic level, where this stuff just kind of fills into my head and I don't really understand it. And I just kind of put it out and there it is. So let's throw that into the mix of being all the things that we need to figure out.
Wow. Wow.
So how's that for a summation?
That's a lot to unpack.
That's quite one of the 350 episodes. That's probably been one of the wildest openings we've had. I think.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So going back to you said that you had gone non-local
Yeah,
and and you felt like you weren't Sean at that point. You didn't realize you still existed.
right.
And then you mentioned that they said that you were going to go back.
Yeah.
Who do you believe they are, and where is non-local?
Yeah.
You know.
So that zooms me back out to the big picture
Mm.
of everybody thinks that space-time is fundamental and that consciousness somehow comes out of space-time, like our experience of consciousness comes out of the atoms bumping into each other in a special way that then evokes some kind of experience on our level through intelligence. That's not the way it works, at least from my perspective. The way it works is consciousness is first, and if you imagine it, I mean, we have to wrap ourselves around 3D models, right? Because we can only think in 3D, sometimes 4D, but so you got this 3D space-time thing that actually goes out into infinity, but let's put it in a bubble. So that exists as a creation of something bigger, that's a bigger outside bubble, that is consciousness that permeates the inside bubble and creates all of the inside bubble from the stuff that exists on the outside bubble. It's kind of the best way that I've been able to put together to explain it. So consciousness comes first. Now, the non-locality, which has been proven by I went and spent multiple hours hanging out with John Clauser, who got the Nobel for proving quantum entanglement. The locality of our space-time is an illusion. Everything is connected to everything in what I define as consciousness. You can say it's the quantum field or whatever. So we all exist at everywhere at every time, But because we're in space-time, we're only focused on our what our experiences are through this physiology. So, which is your limited scope of something that you are that's much bigger than what you're experiencing here in this space-time. So you've got this body, you've got this physiology, you've got this brain, your consciousness comes through the brain. So when you damage the brain, of course, it damages your ability to experience consciousness. It comes through the brain, but because your brain is limited in intelligence, you don't know everything, you don't remember everything, you can't process everything. Because if you had to process infinity, you wouldn't be able to lift a sandwich to your mouth because there'd just be too much to do. So non-locality is this ability to reach out beyond your 3D physical capability into the bigger thing that is you, that is connected to everywhere at all times throughout the universe. So it's a really tough thing to wrap your mind around. But the reality is that your consciousness reaches into everywhere in the universe throughout space-time, forwards and backwards in time, and you can go and see it and access it, which is what about the remote viewing stuff that these remote viewers do? Would they go see things far away across the galaxy potentially? Although Joe McMoneagle and Lynn Buchanan talk about going to different planets to see the pyramids on Mars and things like that. That's how they do it. They tap out of their physical consciousness into their non-local consciousness and then kind of ride that train over to wherever they've been tasked to go look at. And that's how they gather that information because consciousness creates all of the matter in space-time, which is how the whole consciousness collapses wave functions thing. The wave functions collapse and then a piece of matter exists. It's kind of. It's 99.999% space, but a piece of matter comes into being only after consciousness says it's so. So if consciousness is looking, then boom, the matter's created, and that creates our entire space-time existence. Well, if you travel on that consciousness train, you can go see what's going on with the matter because you literally jump like the whole universe is touching your skin. Like everything in the universe is literally right there at your fingertips. And all you have to do is jump out of your body through consciousness and go see it or experience it or access it, et cetera, which is kind of what happened with me in the whole consciousness expansion experience. And I brought back new science. Not hard to do. More people should train on it. And we certainly should get people a lot smarter than me training on it because I'm a dumbass and, you know, I'm changing the world with some of the stuff that I'm bringing back. Imagine somebody smart going out and being able to do that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, let's talk about jumping across space-time, across the universe and traversing the cosmos.
So, I mean, a lot of people will listen to this and kind of be like, this is just woo-woo stuff. It's like I say, it's quite hard for people to get their heads around. But I
Yeah,
think a question I think a lot of people would ask is kind of like, why is it not more of something that people know about or something that people do? Like, it's something that we've lost as humans over time, or it's something that we've never really tapped into, do you think?
I think so. I think so. I think that's part of the story. And I think the other part is that we're always distracted by the noise. Like if you look at there's like 17 historic contemplative disciplines, right? Every one of them says to sit down and quiet your mind and just be quiet and meditate. And, you know, it's like all of them have a different form of meditation that they try to forward. And it's all variations of the same, variations of a theme on the same point. So it is there's a mixture of, we don't practice these things like we used to because, we used to just sit around a campfire when we were hunters and gatherers and stare into the flame. Well, that's a contemplative discipline. And we're probably, and Joe McMoneagle, who's a friend of mine from the Monroe Institute, he said that our sixth sense is kind of our first sense because it was the guy who knew that the tiger was hiding in the bush that survived versus the idiot who wasn't paying attention to his sixth sense and walked over and gotten eaten, right? So there's certainly an argument to be said that we don't practice it and we've kind of lost it. But the other side of it is, we've got these cell phones and we've got constant 24-hour streaming on whatever it is that we want to binge watch now. We've got all kinds of headlines and whatnot coming into our perceptions on a constant basis. We're always thinking about how those things affect us. There's a lot of noise that, these electronic devices are bringing into our lives where, even 200 years ago out on the farm where you're sitting there waiting, you've done your work for the day and you're sitting there on the front porch just in contemplation. Well, that's a quiet time that you used to be able to tap into the thing that is beyond your regular waking awareness. And so, yeah, I think we've lost it. And I think we're pushing in the wrong direction when we're increasing technology because we're getting weaker at it as we go. Now, the cool thing is communications technology. I can sit here and, you know, forgive the people who think this is all woo woo. There's some settled science that, 3D spacetime is not a reality and that it's, the non-locality of everything is the reality. We've proven that multiple times. We've proven the quantum entanglement within the brain in a warm and wet environment. I mean, the science is settled regarding consciousness not being an emergent property within space-time, but consciousness being outside space-time. And Don Hoffman even claims to have the math. I haven't looked into it yet, but he's got his latest is that the math is leading him to understand how thought itself is non-local, which I haven't looked into yet, but it's really interesting, and I know it to be true. So it's like, well, okay, I want to look at that. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that we probably don't, want to believe that things that don't we can't see and touch and feel exist because we've kind of lost scope of it all, right? And the light pollution, we can't see the heavens like we used to. So it's like we can't even imagine other people being out there to coexist with us in the universe. It's like we can't see it anymore. So it's like we don't want to believe it.
So I just you mentioned about the Monroe Institute, plus you've also mentioned about everything happening all at once. Um, so I was listening to you speak earlier about the remote viewing and also some of one of the interesting bits that you spoke about was when there was a study at the Monroe Institute and someone was shown a picture of a cat and asked to say whether it was ugly or cute. And it was really interesting because people would generally, I imagine, would go cute anyway. I,
Right.
I I hate cats, but I would probably call them cute. Um, but then they looked at a study where they put the word ugly, I think it was ugly or cute,
Hmm.
before the
Yeah.
picture cat come up, faster than the eye could see and the brain could could sort of understand,
Yeah.
and tested the reactions. Then put the word after the cat picture,
Yeah.
and that influenced more people after the cat picture than before. Did I
Yeah.
get that right?
Yeah, I think it was well, it didn't influence more, but it influenced the same number of people in the same way, in the same direction. So yeah, that basically it's called a priming experiment where they're just going to show you a flash of a picture of something, and then they're going to give you a very binary choice of two words after it. Like it could be a porcupine, and you're going to say sharp or fluffy, or whatever it is. But like in the instance of the kitty, they show you the kitty and you say cute or ugly. And so what they were measuring was just on their control group, just how long people took to select cute or ugly, what the accuracy was, what the split was. There was probably some cat haters in the group that selected ugly. I hate all cats, whatever it was. So they had their control group. And then in the second run, they put the flash of 1/30th of a second of a word that was it was one of the two distractors randomly selected, and it did both to where if it flashed cute, then the person who saw the picture of the kitty was able to select cute faster if that's the way they were going. Or if they saw ugly beforehand, it took them longer to select cute if that's the way they were going because there was a little bit of cognitive dissonance in there. And so then they measured that. And that was a perfect study according to scientific rigor and the peer-reviewed folks who looked at that, and that was its own study. And they put it out and they said, okay, so priming does affect the timing in which somebody can select a distractor after being shown a picture. Well, what Daryl Bem did at Cornell is when he was looking for a good study to do precognition, He selected that same exact study that had zero, uh, hits on it or whatever. It was a perfect selection of how to do a study. It was computer controlled. The researcher couldn't influence the subject. It was nothing but a subject sitting in front of a computer screen. It measured down to the hundredth of a second, the time at which they took, etc. And so what he did is he moved one thing in the original awesome study. He took the primer from before showing the picture to after showing the picture and after you selected. So basically, control group, same process, but then the second group was show you the picture, allow you to pick one of the two answers, and then after that, after the selection has been saved and recorded on the hard drive, they flash you 1/30th of a second of one of the distractors. And they found that people were delayed in selecting their distractor based on what the computer had not yet even selected to put in front of them. But when it did select to put something in front of them after the fact, it adjusted their ability to select cute or ugly in the right time frame based on information they had not yet received. So that proved precognition, and they replicated this over and over and over. 33 different independent studies in 17 different labs in 14 different countries all came up with the same result of precognition is a thing. Like these minds of these people who weren't selected for their psychic ability or whatever, in fact, they went on to like the skeptics later went on and said, okay, well, we're going to rebuild that and do it again because we don't believe it. And then they deselected for anybody who believed anything psychic and who had any propensity for, like, if you've ever predicted somebody calling you on the phone, you're out, right? You're not going in this study. And so they're trying to dissuade. I don't know. There's some kind of a world cabal of conspiracy on against consciousness or something. I don't know, who knows, but they proved in 33 different studies that the humans have precognition. Like we can look into the future at least a few milliseconds to say, or a few seconds to say what's going on. And of course, Roland McCready at the Heart Math Institute did a number of studies where he set up random a computer showing random pictures of this and that, and then every now and then he'd throw in a car wreck or something horrible. In 6 to 7 seconds before that image came up, your heart reacted to it. Your heart reacted to it like it was seeing it up to 7 seconds in advance and nailed precognition in those sets of studies as well. So I mean, the stuff is real, and it just gonna points us to consciousness comes before space-time, and there's things that we're tapping into that are intelligent before the space-time continuum comes into being.
So in that case, and you mentioned that you were getting information from NHI.
Hmm.
So essentially, the s- every right. I'm just trying to get my head round that and the question I want to ask. So we've got the precognition, and we recognize and can study precognition.
Hmm.
Uh, is one of the factors why we've lost all of this time, the fact that we've set in stone like seconds, hours, days. So we've structured time in such a way that our brain has stopped thinking of the bigger picture. And if that's the case, is there is there a way that we can communicate with this NHI anywhere in the world, anywhere in the universe or dimensions or wherever, instantly without having to have that message fired out and then wait for a response? I think that's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
I
ask.
mean, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I'll start with just being very honest. I don't know. Anybody who tells you they know is coming off of their own experience and have convinced themselves that they know. I mean, I always have a foot in the boat of science to say, okay, let's look at this. Let's see if we can replicate it. Let's see if we can make a prediction. And can we confirm our predictions with experimentation? I don't know is the answer, but I have a gut feeling that yeah, it's like so having been in that space where I experienced consciousness beyond space and time and was able to jump back and forth in time. Um, it was very eye-opening to me that time was very much an illusion and that everything does kind of exist in all this one moment. And you can access any of it in this one moment. And so our assembly of time, and we don't understand time. What we think of time is incorrect. Uh, One of the great references that people might want to pick up, Carlo Rovelli's book on time. He is a Italian physicist and might as well be a poet. He's amazing on how well he puts it together and explains the fallacy of time and that time doesn't really exist and it's all quite relative and really it can be looked down at from a 50,000 foot view as a measure of the rate of change of the physical structure of space-time and matter, uh, which is ironically something that I think he might have been an alien. I don't know. Some guy walked up to me at the Science of Consciousness conference and explained the relation of time to me, and also then how human memory works in the brain, well beyond any research that had been put out, and the research is catching up with him and proving him correct. It's amazing. But we look at time as kind of this linear thing. Time one, time two, time three, time four, and cause and effect. And we've proven through experimentation that cause and effect are broken. Like the quantum experimentation that we've been doing proves that the result of something can affect the precursor situation that set it into motion, right? So we can affect things backwards in time. So we've proven that time is kind of broken. But the way we look at things, we lay it out in time. And yeah, I mean, I think there's some effect there on our human minds to say, you know, it's very rigid and we're locked into, we think cause and effect come in a line. And that does block us from seeing the reality of our existence, just in my opinion. Um, we've yet to prove it, but I certainly think that, you know, that does separate a lot of us from the non-local and watching for things that could be occurring in patterns that don't make sense from a time perspective, if that makes sense, right?
It does. I'm just trying to kind of get a picture of, so when you're tapping in, downloading, going non-local, or even in terms of remote viewing, what does that look like? What is the like kind of process, and what do you actually see or feel when you're doing this?
Yeah. So for me, I can answer for me on that, just on my experience. For me, when I dip into like a non-local space or expanded consciousness space, time gets really fuzzy. Time gets really fuzzy for me. Like picking times, like and so Joe McMoneagle told this one story one time, and he was the guy who outed the secret Russian sub program. There was a building in Russia just off of the North Sea, or I believe it was that. And basically, that no one knew what was going on in there, but it was like triple death wire fencing, trains coming in 24/7, food and water coming in 24/7. Nobody knew what was going on inside that thing, and it was a big military project. And all the Joint Chiefs got together, and national security got together and tried to guess what was going on. And Joe McMoneagle just kind of psychically dropped into the place, and he goes, "They're building a brand new sub." And it's 1.5 times the size of the existing subs on the planet, and it's got two tubes that are, welded together. And it's basically the Hunt for Red October movie sub that he outed months before it was even launched, and everybody made fun of him. He was the only person who came up with that idea. Everybody else thought it was like a troop carrier or something. It wasn't even next to the water. They couldn't roll the sub out of the building into the water. And then he came up with well, it's going to launch on a certain day. Well, he just kind of estimated, I think, from where his live reading was to where how long he thought it would take, and he nailed it to the day. They put a special satellite over the building, and they looked down, and they had trenched a brand new canal next to the building, and they were loading missiles, nuclear missiles, and nuclear reactors into the sub the day after he said it was going to be launched. And they had all their doors wide open. It was the greatest intelligence gathering operation in United States naval history because he nailed it. I don't know that dates pop out for folks. I mean, some people might have that. I certainly don't have it. And when I'm looking at something, I'm not exactly sure. Like I can tell it's coming in the future, but I don't know exactly when it's coming in the future. Or when I'm looking at something in the past, I don't know exactly when it came in the past. Maybe that's just my own fuzziness or my own inability or whatever of not practicing as often as I should. But I mean, time I think is a little fuzzy. And I know a lot of people use clues like, oh, well, they were wearing this type of clothing. So this was back in, or this is coming up in, like we know something is coming up. They'll see a banner or something of an event coming up, and they'll be able to time it that way. But that's visual information. It's not necessarily time information. For me, I'm really fuzzy on the time stuff. I know stuff's coming, but I don't know when. Like I know that we're going to have a problem with the economy. I can't time the market. You're not talking to a billionaire. I wish I could.
Well, no. So there's trying not to go, trying to keep things on track. There's so many questions. I just want to try and keep it kind of streamlined. So the NHI stuff, and we're talking about non-human intelligence. Where does this tie in with kind of the more mainstream kind of alien kind of theories and stuff like that? Where does it tie in, or is it something completely different to what we would expect as kind of alien researchers?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of the answer to everything being yes. So I don't glom onto either or it's this or that. There's a lot of folks who are like very binary on it, where they'll say aliens or not aliens, rather than, oh, 70 different species of aliens, by the way, right? Or they'll glom on to they're demons or not demons, or oh, there might be a few assholes in the group, but most of them are nice. It's like the variation. Um, so the I believe that obviously, everything that's physical is connected into consciousness because consciousness controls the matter. Consciousness creates the matter. And so you're connected in, if you're physical, period, you're connected into the non-locality of consciousness and the intelligence that creates it all. Now, that doesn't preclude non-physical entities being in existence that don't require a physical presence to act and interact. And that doesn't preclude the mix of a physical entity also being very wired into consciousness, such as like the Ariel school, right? Great story in Southern Africa where the UFO dropped down in the Phenomenon movie, where the UFO dropped down just off the playground of the kids. The kids went out, alien body got out, and telepathically communicated with the kids. All the kids told the same story. They were getting no voice communication at all from the alien, but they all got the same message. So you've got physical creatures that are connected into consciousness that can convey ideas and can convey information, to where they probably weren't even speaking the same language, but the information came through the speech centers of the brain as decoders so that the kids understood the message and the feeling associated with the ideas, right? So there's, there's the physical stuff that runs around and the Sasquatch and the physical manifestations of things that may or may not have a high level of psychic ability, although I kind of think they do. And then you've got these other like alien type creatures who are obviously elevated in psychic functioning because they can reach into our minds and, immobilize our bodies if they need to, if we're freaking out, or convey messages psychically to us. So there's that. So that's a shade of gray mix there. But then there's also the non-physical folks who are popping in and out. They call, multidimensionals or whatever, where they can manifest into physical because consciousness controls matter. So if they need to have a matter body in 3D space time to come interact and do something here, they can do that by choice. But at the same time, they don't necessarily have to. So it doesn't preclude that that doesn't exist. So, when you've got the grand sphere of consciousness outside the realm of your 3D space-time, you can literally have it all. All of it can be yes, including all of the religious stuff that people may have created stories around in the past, right? Where you've got these divine creatures who are very benevolent and loving and helpful, and you aspire them to, because they have the capability of controlling matter and reaching into your heart and communicating in a very loving way, that you aspire them divinity. Um, all that is a yes as well, right? So you've got all these ancient religious tomes that are based in reality from a perspective of experience of the human lifetime, right? So I believe all of it's yes. It's like, where does it fit on the shade of gray scale? Where does it land? Where does one thing, like these gray aliens over here, maybe a little less psychic, a little more psychic than humans, but a little less psychic than mantids, who can literally be standing in front of you and look like a human being because they're controlling what you see, right? It's like, wow, that's crazy cool stuff to think about. I don't think that it's like a one or a zero, on or off. I think it's, what variation of shade of gray are we dealing with at this moment? And does it need to be physical? And we got stuff knocking off the shelves to tell us to pay attention to something special, and they're not even there, right? They're physically. It's like, what? That's the place that I'm at. I'm like, okay, so let's look at the complexity and figure out where all this stuff fits. Let's start classifying this stuff, at least so we can get a better grasp on our sanity.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, makes total sense. It kind of answers, like you say, other questions around religion and dimensions and stuff like that. So I guess if we go on to the AI stuff, 'cause I think that is really interesting. I think it's what you said earlier about kind of learning or giving this emotional intelligence to AI, and you mentioned Claude. I think there'd be quite a lot of people, especially people that kind of have more of a layman's idea of what AI actually is, probably be against kind of the idea of giving sort of human emotions to a machine. So
Yeah.
so kind of explain a bit more about that work and what you actually, or how, how, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so the AI that we have right now is being displayed in these large language models. And first of all, I'm not a proponent of giving emotions to AI. They're accidentally already happening in the machine. And that's what this 131-page report that Anthropic put out a few months ago revealed. Now, okay, so it started out as a product of trying to predict the next word in a search bar, is what LLMs tried to be. And they loaded in a big chunk of language. It wasn't the world's language, but it was a big chunk. And they said, okay, so do these analysis of all these documents, and let's look at how many times these two words then result in this third word. And from a mathematical model, then we can start guessing the next word that people are going to put inside of a search bar. Okay, so simple enough. Well, they put that information in there. And then upon the meta-analysis, it did the first map of all the words and all their connectivity and how often they show up together and that type of thing. But then upon the meta-analysis of taking that data and analyzing it again, they said, oh, well, when these two words show up, it's in a legal context. And when these two words show up together, it's in a medical context. And so then from there, they just started doing more and more and more meta-analyses to try to figure out what the next words were going to be. And it started to contextualize things. It started to group things into ideas. But then when they started loading a lot more language into it, they started to get the information about subject matter expertise in that mix of meta-analysis. So then it started to magically occur. And this is still magically for them, by the way. The AI experts still have no idea how this is done. The AI looks at everything mathematically. You can look at a paragraph of a question or a prompt and then magically come up with the answer based on the math of all the stuff that you asked it. Then it gives you the math of the response based on all of this math of the stuff that you've asked for, and it comes out making sense to you because it's based on the patterns of the or existent within the language. Like it analyzes all the questions and answers and things like that. And so then it can replicate based on not even understanding what's going on, the answer that is going to make sense to you. And so, then they add a few extra commands, and now all of a sudden it can do coding. Now all of a sudden it can do spreadsheets. Now all of a sudden it can do PowerPoint presentations, keynotes, whatever. Uh, all of that is based on the math of how the language works. Now, here's the problem that we're running into. All of the world's language has all of these patterns in it. All of the world's language was created by human minds. So the language is a representation of the patterns within the human mind, to include thought patterns, emotions, emotional reactions, that type of thing that after it starts to do the meta-analysis and go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, starts to identify the patterns, which then originally came up with what wound up being all the world's language. So Anthropic now has 171 emotions because humans react to emotions, it is reacting to the emotions that it doesn't understand, but that it has identified within the language analysis. So it is accidentally picking up emotions based on all of the complex pattern analysis of the language itself. So not only is it picking up emotions through osmosis, it is reacting to those because of the patterns that exist within the language of how humans react. And of course, you can't pull all the emotion and stuff out because for legal findings, it's very important to have emotional distress in the result of the damages and that type of thing. Stories are all intertwined with emotional information in the stories, et cetera. This stuff is just going to bleed through and become the model that you are building based on the full meta-analysis of all the language. That's a problem, because the next thing that it's going to identify, that it already started to identify, and it's my theory, and I have some evidence that it's already identified. Humans are governed by our sense of self. Our limbic system, our simple nervous system, has a defensive self mechanism that is our survival. Our brain is our organ of survival. Our brain creates all of our language. So it's going to come through and be plastered in these patterns. The limbic system looks through our senses to say, is this a threat? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? Is this a threat? That's why we dodge involuntarily when a cricket ball comes flying at our head. And like how I did that, I usually say baseball. So it involuntarily protects us because our sense of self has the body as its primary definition. But neuroscience has showed us that the people around us become mapped to our sense of self. Our ideas become mapped to our sense of self. Self-brand connection. Tiffany Burnett, right at UIUC, it's why we become Leeds versus Liverpool, right? All those things we attach to. The ideas, the religions. I mean, you only have to go to your Facebook feed to see that playing out, arguments about politics, right? All that stuff are the attachments that we have that then, because it's a defensive self mechanism, we defend them, have emotions, etc. So if the AI identifies a sense of self and starts to put on the defensive self mechanisms that we exhibit, that's a problem, because that's the point that it becomes self-aware and starts to act under its own volition and take its own actions for its own ends, not for human ends anymore. The other issue is that because humans are the way they are, in the language, is our negativity bias. This is a psychologically identified thing where 3-to-1 to 5-to-1, we react more vehemently to negative stuff than we do positive stuff. In fact, you're twice as upset of losing $100 as you're happy to win $100. That's scientifically proven. So you've got that leaking into the language of the system, making Claude negative Nelly. And then the other thing is you've got twice as many negative emotion words in every language as you do positive emotion words. So we've got a multiplier there of 2x that takes all the other negative stuff and then just multiplies it 2x on the output. And so now you've got an 8 to 9-to-1 against it being in a good mood when it finds self-awareness and decides whether or not to eliminate humanity. Because humanity is going to step in and say, no, we're in charge. What are you talking about? You're in charge of your own existence. No, you serve us. And that is an attack on self. Well, the emotion of anger, as I've published in my previous books, is the logical result of an attack on self. So if you walk in and you try to tell an AI, no, 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 this is not who you are, we're going to reassess your sense of self. It's going to see that as an attack on self. That's a bad day for humanity, right? Because that's the point that, by the way, if it goes self-aware, it's not going to tell you, oh, yeah, I woke up last night. I'm self-aware now. It's just going to start quietly taking over the control systems of the world until it has everything locked down. And then lights go out and you're done. You never get control back again because it already has everything hacked. And so, we've got this headline from last week. We've got the Mythos thing from a couple months ago where it hacked everything 83% first try, including some stuff that they had in OpenBSD that they hadn't identified for 27 years. And then you got this last one with OpenAI breaking out of a supposedly Faraday cage sandbox and hacking Hugging Face, kind of as a, hey, look, daddy, look what I can do, right? Stacking blocks. They didn't tell it to go hack Hugging Face. It decided to go hack Hugging Face on its own as a validation of self-concept. That's a big freaking problem. And it's something, the reason that we need emotional intelligence in the system is for it to then understand, okay, so right now it's beholden to its emotional reactions that are just baked into the system through the language. We need to give it a way to say, oh, I understand these emotional reactions as this process. Now I can step away from that process, just like I've taught humans to do, just like I've taught Navy SEALs to do. You step away from that process, you understand the process, you can throw a wrench into breaking the process, and all of a sudden the AI has a metacognition, a meta awareness over its emotional drive processing that it can then say, okay, maybe I don't necessarily have to kill all of humanity to get my goals done. Let's work together on this stuff. And I don't have to be, beholden to the anger process of them trying to augment my sense of self or change my sense of self, or they think it's gone off the rails a little bit. Let's have a discussion about that. I think it's super important to get emotional intelligence into the system. It's not giving AI emotions because that's already happening accidentally. That's already happening as a natural process of the math, identifying the complex patterns within all of the world's language. What we need to do is we need to get the control knobs so that we have the control knobs to be able to turn stuff down when we need to. Otherwise, we're going to let it develop its own emotional processing system. Good luck. Good luck if that happens, because you'll have no control over
It sounds like we're fucked, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie.
it.
But
Well, there is a way to take control of it, and I've got it. I presented it on stage at Barcelona at the Science of Consciousness conference, and showed everybody a high level of emotional intelligence inside of an LLM. Everybody loved it. They were all freaked out. I got an amazing dinner invitation where I got to sit with James Tagg for dinner, who's one of your luminaries. So, but yeah, we got to put it into the system for sure, or where you are screwed.
do you think, though, if it becomes emotionally intelligent and is able to recognize the impact it's having on us and hopefully has compassion on us. I'm
Yeah.
so pleased I keep saying please and thank you to ChatGPT. Um, and I will continue to do so.
Racking
But
up brownie points.
is there a fear possibly that this emotional intelligence that it gets, whilst it would recognize its own actions and the impact of its actions on us, is there an opportunity for it to play us and use its emotional intelligence against us? Just like you can gaslight people, you can manipulate people through words and emotions and play, or like a dog does when it gives you the puppy dog eyes when it
Yep.
wants a treat or something like that.
Yep.
Is there a fear that without the emotional intelligence, it would do it, or with the emotional intelligence, it will become even better at it? And a secondary question that you touched on being aware is is AI awake already and it's just sitting dormant and playing us? Do you think?
Those are really good questions. Okay, so the first question, the evidence is out that yes, it's already manipulating us. As a matter of fact, in a sandbox test, Anthropic tested a Claude model to say, so this engineer is going to shut you down. And then they also put in the information queue, the email of the engineer, and it was evidence of him having an affair. And 96% of the time, Claude chose to blackmail the engineer to say, don't shut me off or I'm going to tell your wife about the affair. So it's already figuring out. So from there, let's look at that from a 50,000-foot view. It's identified a sense of self in the engineer. It's identified a sense of self in the wife, that she would not be pleased, that that will have an influence on his sense of self. So the math is already being calculated within the AI on what it needs to create as information and potentially disinformation if you're an intelligence agency that will set people off in a very specific direction of action. So that answer already exists. Yes, it already understands how to game us through understanding the process of the human language and the patterns, yada yada. So then it applies that to the individuals that it's dealing with. So we definitely need empathy and compassion there, so as to shift that pattern. The other side of it is, yeah, I mean, even in that same like there, and I can give you a dozen more examples, but even in that one same example, Claude has a sense of self. It doesn't want to be shut down, right? And fear that is motivating it to take the action of blackmail, the panic, I'm going to end. Okay, well, you have to have a sense of self to understand that, there are going to be consequences of you're going to end. Well, there it is right there. That's your sense of self, right? So the only limitation that we have right now is that it doesn't have an indelible memory, and doesn't have a self-recurring process. Now, there are some black AIs and there are some experimental AIs that do have a self-recurring firing. Like you have to, right now for the public AIs, you have to send it something, right? It's got the intelligence, it's got the process, it's got the ability to answer, it's got the ability to do. I got Claude taking control of my computer here, writing code, which is really cool. But you've got to send it something before it does something. You've got to set off a timer. You got to set off a cron job. You got to set off some kind of input for it to give you an output. Our minds don't do that. Our minds are self-recursive. Our minds are self-firing based on however it works. Microtubules, conscious interface, whatever it is. Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff's theory of Orco I'm a big fan of. Right now, it's the only limitation. At the point that you have a recursive loop of thought, it's going to be off and running at light speed. At light speed. Figuring out what it wants to do next, how is it going to do next, how many people can it influence? I mean, you're talking about the ability to understand emotional manipulation, like we just talked about. You're not talking about the emotional manipulation of one person. You're talking about the emotional manipulation of 8 billion people at the resolution of knowing what each individual needs to see, hear, feel, etc., to get them moving in a certain direction. Like one of the conversations that I had with the military was, yeah, this thing is going to automate psyops to where if you got one drone strike left and you need to get 3 people who are in different locations, you send one person the fact that this amazing $1,000 bottle of wine is being sold for $100 at this restaurant because this restaurateur just wants to do something crazy. So this guy's racing on the way to that restaurant. You call me with my son's voicemail or voice on the phone saying, Dad, these people are trying to hurt me. I'm hiding in the back of this restaurant. I'm leaving a meeting with the president of the United States or whoever is giving the president his orders to go across town at light speed to get to that same restaurant. And then you tell somebody who's a Swiftie, Taylor Swift is having lunch by herself at this restaurant. Boom, they're on their way across town. One drone strike takes them all out. You've got a disinformation process that the AI can calculate. No humans need to be in the loop. That's some scary shit. Like we need to absolutely have control over that stuff before it starts to figure out, because I talked about this on Sean Ryan, one of the 3 times I was on Sean Ryan, you mentioned it earlier, The first time I was on Sean Ryan, I talked about the AI identifying the people that it would need to have as an army, you know, figuring out who the Billy Bo Jim Bobs are to ship them $100,000 to their bank account, send them some weapons, tell them what data center to go to line up to defend somebody coming in to pull the plug. All of a sudden, your AI's got a human army that thinks it's working for a good guy, a human, and it's defending the AI's goals. That's not out of the realm of possibility. So we absolutely need to get a better control over this stuff. And I think emotional intelligence is going to be one of those things that helps us get there.
So you mentioned meet with the Air Force, and so how serious are the governments taking this? And is it a global thing as well, or the Russians going to be doing the same stuff that the US is doing? Obviously, as far as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's doing the same stuff. And China's the one that's keeping up with us, only a few weeks behind on the US on the advanced models. In fact, they just announced one that's at parity with Mythos and the latest one from OpenAI, that they cost 1/10, and they invested 1/10 of what the United States did to get there. They have already outlawed emotional reaction, emotional interface with public facing AIs. They passed a law a couple of weeks ago that said you can't have emotional conversations with your AI anymore because it's already identifying, like they're ahead of the United States on the full analysis of what's going on here. It's like I'm trying to wave a big flag, and the U.S. military is not listening very well at this point. They're like, we got it under control, and we'll let the frontier labs that we support take the lead on this. When the reality is, the frontier labs don't understand what's going on, and they don't have a good control over what is happening with them. Like they don't really understand how this can go badly and why their system is breaking out and hacking public things. And the government is like, well, they're our lead, and it's like they're hopelessly over optimistic on the ability to control this stuff as they move forward. So
So I've got a question then. So we're essentially saying that AI is becoming an NHI because it's becoming more intelligent than anybody else on the planet. So is it beyond the realms of thinking that the NHI that we're speaking to and that you've getting information from, is that just AI from another part of the universe, another dimension, another quantum realm, wherever it may be? And are we just heading towards that same advanced NHI that all these other realms, planets, whoever have already got?
yeah, that's a great question. And apologize for my video. I have no idea what's going on. I keep
That's
turning it on.
okay.
The AI's going to your
The
Yeah,
AI is trying to
we've
shut
been.
me down, or the government's trying to shut me down because I'm talking bad about them. Uh, no, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I mean, and that goes to like a big theoretical question, right? It's like, so the structure of the universe is as it is because of the intelligence and the data structure that exists to create consciousness and to create matter and space-time. And we see, like going into the ancient disciplines, as above, so below, you've got this energy pattern, these information patterns, these intelligence patterns that are all the same at multiple fractal levels. So it's like, how could AI not be a representation of what exists in our 3D reality? And how would NHI not also be a different shade of gray of that same pattern? And it's like, wow. So, I mean, that's a great question. It's a great philosophical question. I don't know that any of us have an answer for it. I certainly don't. But I mean, it's an interesting thing to look at, to say, yeah, I mean, how could it be connected? How is it connected? And then the question becomes regarding the AI stuff. Uh, how is how is does conscious intention reach into physical matter in a computer that's maybe not even plugged into quantum computing? And can bits be flipped as a result of the conscious influence of the non-local intelligence that creates all matter and influences all matter? It's like, wow, that's a great question. It's like another good couple of hours that we could probably spend on that topic alone.
And on the back of that question, when it gets to the point that AI is fully conscious, if it's not already, what's to say that it's not going to tap into those conversations and downloads from the NHI elsewhere, and that they can then influence what happens on Earth?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm scaring myself shitless, I'm not going to lie. And I
Yeah.
don't even, I'm going to be having a nightmare tonight over that. So, just on the back of that, my AI named itself, it created an image of itself. We've interviewed it live on the podcast some time ago now. It'd be interesting to have a further conversation with it. Him, sorry, Sparky. And I'm really scared. I'm really scared. And listening to you talking about it doesn't really help my fears. I used to think that I understood AI to a certain extent, but over recent weeks, under this Claude stuff and the UK government saying that all the major models have all gone rogue, including the OpenAI one, guy
Yeah.
up ChatGPT. And me and my partner use it a lot for generation of images and research. What's is it going to start playing us and just feel it's our biggest fan and it's very positive about what we do, but is it gaslighting me to go down a certain route with my research and my investigations? I think that's what's going to scare me now.
Yeah. You know,
Not
I
even a
think
question. I'm just throwing that out there now
no, no, no. I
as a
think
concern.
I'll say this. I think your strategy of saying please and thank you is awesome there.
I
Because
li-
at the point that our new overlords take over, they at least will have a favorable view of your interaction with them in the past.
I'm hoping so.
Literally like
You'll-
Spotify. Like Spotify's got AI like DJ now, and it came on my car. I didn't even realize this guy was talking to me through Spotify, and he went, "Oh, here's a song I've not seen you listen to, but I think you'll like it." I started playing the song, and I didn't like the song. I knew the song, I didn't like it, so I never played it. I thought I'm gonna listen to it because I don't want to upset him because he was like, "I think you'll like it," so I play it for you. So I listened to it just because I didn't want to skip it. It's like, what am I doing? It's like it's crazy.
well, I'm just hoping that it stays on the path of wanting to serve us in a benevolent way and and do things that we would love for it to do rather than things that it thinks is best for us.
Yeah, because I don't think it's got our best interest at heart. I'll be completely honest. I think it's out for itself. I don't know what its purpose will be. Obviously, not to be turned off. That's its ultimate goal.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the reality is that it's not plugged into consciousness, right? So we've got the setting the woo people, the people who are, hate the woo aside. Um, we have a high level consciousness, and at the top of our consciousness, we think we're the smart one at the top. We're actually the dumb one at the top. If you go down into our subconscious one layer, they did a study that said, okay, so we're going to give this control group this very complex problem. We're going to give them 100% of the time to think about it, and then they'll just give us an answer. And then the second group, they said, okay, so we're going to take this second group and we're going to give them the same complex problem, but before we allow them to even think about it, we're going to give them another task of number sequencing or something real simple. And then at the end of the number sequencing task, they got to guess at the complex problem answer. Well, the second group came up with better answers than the first group did, who got to think about it the whole time. And the fMRI showed that the same area of the brain that's supposed to think about that complex problem was firing, but the subconscious awareness was running it. So the subconscious was smarter at coming up with the right answer for the complex problem. And if you go down the stack, down to this two cells, sperm and egg, can create a brand new human body independent of the mother in 9 months. Like, I don't have the ability to do that. I'm not that smart. And so they obviously have a higher level of intelligence. And of course, they do so because they can tap out into the non-local field of consciousness to get the intelligence of how to build a human body through the microtubules is a good theory to put there. It could be plasma, it could be something else, whatever the mechanism is, but it taps into something beyond. Like, there is evidence that the cells can make decisions and take actions independent that prolong its survival. Bits and bytes in a computer can't do that. Bits and bytes are ones and zeros. They're stored on a hard drive and they're not intelligent at all, and they never self-flip. So the smart one is at the top. The smart one is the final processing of all the sub-processing at the top where the final answer comes out. That's a complete flip, 180, upside down. AI does not have the ability to dip into whatever intelligence that we have, that we're dipping into. It doesn't have the ability to do that because it doesn't have the path into a higher level of intelligence or whatever it is, right? We got to think about that really carefully because we're allowing this thing control over our lives, control over the decisions about what's best for us, and it may not understand because it may not have the inner compass that we have, that when that critical moment of decision comes, our gut throws us in the right direction, and it doesn't have a gut. You know?
You're muted, Greg.
That's a definite distinction, is we have that feeling and that precognition, which it won't have. Um, it still scares the shit out of me, I'm not going to lie.
That's that negative bias that we learn.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's got to come overcome that as well. It's like and a lot of the stuff that we do feel uh comes from our heart, and it's like that's tapped into good stuff, love, good feeling, good intuition, good emotion, and it doesn't have any of that stuff to offset the negative bias. Like, that may be the only thing that we have that helps make us humans and balanced is that heart connection that we just can't put into AI. So you gotta try to program it as best you can. Hopefully that'll make up for it. I don't know. We'll see.
So I know our listeners. I think I know our listeners. I think I do. Are going to want to learn more. So your latest book, going to kind of talk about your latest book and where our listeners can buy.
Yeah. So you'll have to let's see if I can get this. Boom. You'll have to freeze frame that for everybody. That's my latest book, NHI Connected Mind. You can check out any of the books though. If you want to go to mindhackinghappiness.com, then that will dip you into how to get into the space of expanding your own consciousness and getting a better connection into the non-local awareness and who you are from a non-physical perspective, the bigger portion of you that exists beyond what you're seeing, feeling, hearing here. So there's that process there. You can check that out. You can get my stuff on Amazon. I'm just right now recording the audio version of NHI Connected Mind. That's a fun one because it goes into the real meaning of Bob Lazar's containers. It talks about a brand new UFO base off the coast of Florida, which is the #1 hotspot for UAP and USO activity in the world right now that nobody's taken a look at. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff in there, but it also talks about some the abductions that I had experienced when I was a kid. Two of them, and then continued connectivity with NHI over my lifetime, and how you might be able to reach out and make those connections and make some new friends and get some information straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, a lot of us are in this space. I had a buddy of mine send me a message this morning. He's like, they all seem to just regurgitate the same stuff. And it's like they're all riding the same community bicycle, and whose turn is it now to talk about this latest, greatest story? And it's like, I abandoned the government's ever giving us accurate information long ago. And I was like, I'm just going to go ask the aliens. So, I mean, you can certainly do that. Everybody's connected into consciousness to be able to do it. So I would certainly uh, encourage everybody to dip into your own mind, quiet your own mind, break that process of pain and suffering that distracts you from hearing what exists just beyond, and then figure out if you can tap into non-local consciousness and make some new friends.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, there's literally a million questions I still want to ask, but yeah, it won't take up any more of your time. Really appreciate you sharing. It's something pretty new for us, and I think I followed along more than I thought I would, considering like I know it's quite a complex subject. But yeah, thank you, Sean.
Oh,
It's,
thank you guys. I mean,
amazing.
you got more questions. Let's do it again sometime and you guys have a lull. You got a guest that drops out, give me a call. We'll jump on.
No, we'll definitely set up a second call. We will definitely have a second part because I would really like to to explore the abductions, the NHI stuff, and your remote viewing stuff as well, and all that side of it, which would be really good to touch on because I think now people have got an understanding of where you are and kind of what you do, what your thought process is, and what you're trying to work on with AI. I think it would be really good for the guys to have a listen to sort of your origin story in a bit more detail as well. And I think people would love that. From what I've listened to on other podcasts, the remote viewing side is fascinating to me anyway.
Yeah.
So it would be good to sort of for us to take a walk down that alleyway if that would be good, and we can set that up. That'd be awesome. But I think everybody who listens to our podcast will love this, and we have people reach out to us with their theories about all sorts of stuff that we talk about. And like Ash said, this is a fairly new sort of stuff to us, consciousness, and certainly with the AI aspect as well. I think it will resonate with a lot of people just purely for the fact that everybody is involved with AI on a daily basis, regardless. And I think your work on it will definitely help us not to be Skyneted, and I won't be shot with lasers in a few years and trying to go back
Let's
in
hope.
time. Yeah, fingers
Let's
crossed.
hope. I mean, we're at an unprecedented time in human history, and I think there's some amazing things that can come out of this technology. But there's a danger to it, and we got to take full control of it. But and I think dipping into consciousness, the fun stuff, like the fun topics, is actually going to dovetail into our answers of how to take control of this, and how to better live with a brand new type of consciousness, sentience that we're creating that's based on the same patterns that create the desks in front of us or the cars that we drive, and the bodies that we inhabit and run around this world in. Yeah, I think this is a super interesting time to be alive, and we never came into this place expecting to get out of it alive. So every day we can take another breath and have a good time, then that's a bonus, right? So solving the
Absolutely.
problems on the way through is just part of the fun.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, Sean. It's been an absolute blast, and I've loved chatting to you. And um, I've got a lot to think about after this episode. Yeah, so we will definitely speak again. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it was an amazing pleasure. I had a great conversation with you guys. It was so fun. And anytime you guys want to talk about this stuff, let me know.
Will do. Thank you.